Hello, my name is Brent Retzlaff, and I'm graduating from CMU with a Bachelor of Arts majoring in History and minors in English and Biblical and Theological Studies. I was asked to reflect today on what my CMU degree has meant to me. I could reflect today on many aspects of my degree. My time on student council, the many hours spent reading and writing the stories of people from many eras and times, or even my time spent wandering in the forest behind CMU, known amongst students as the Back 40, attempting to avoid the responsibilities of the academic life in which we all found ourselves. All of these experiences helped to shape my story, but also the story of this institution and the experiences of fellow students around me. You see, as a student of history, I have had the opportunity to dig through many stories, and I have learned that each story helps to shape the next. The historian Carlos Ginzburg researched and wrote The Cheese and the Worms, which is one of my favorite stories, a microhistory of a 16th century miller. A microhistory is an intensive historical investigation of a well-defined, smaller unit of research. Charles Joyner says that a microhistory aspires to ask the large questions in small places. There are, of course, many styles of history that I was able to learn about in the course Theories and Methods of History, a senior history seminar, which I took with Brian Fraze. I was also had the opportunity to write my own body of work in this course, which I will discuss later. The Cheese and the Worms is an in-depth look at the popular culture of the 16th century as seen through the eyes of an ordinary miller who would be brought to trial during the Inquisition. Ginzburg was able to recreate his story using the trial records of the time. In the very grand scheme of things, the miller on trial, Pinocchio, had very little importance. After all, many people were put on trial during the Inquisition, and we have not had an entire book written on every single one. The story of Pinocchio does give the reader of today the opportunity to peer into the life of the everyday citizen of the 16th century, an area that other forms of history are not able to get into. I highly doubt that Pinocchio imagined that a student of history in the 21st century would be impacted by his readings and interpretations of texts such as the Bible and the Decameron. My point being this: we are all continuously writing our own stories, and in doing so we are weaving our stories together, if even for a small time. We sometimes have the opportunity to weave our story with the story of someone that we will never have the opportunity to meet, as I did with this 16th century miller. In the same way that I have had the opportunity to weave my life with characters of the past, I have had an opportunity to weave my life with fellow students, as well as the faculty and staff of CMU. In my time at CMU, I've had the opportunity to be a part of the life and fabric of the CMU experience in more ways than simply the rigorous academics. I was blessed with many leadership opportunities during my time at CMU that allowed me to grow in faith and life. I feel blessed to have had the opportunity to weave my life with this institution during such a critical time period, both for myself and the institution, being part of a search for CMU's second president during my time as student representative on the Board of Governors, as well as watching the beginnings of a new library that we can see taking shape before our eyes today, helped me to see the changes that can occur rapidly in the life of a place. Just as I watched CMU grow and build, adding landscape markers that will not only become a part of the fabric of this community, but also the community around us, I have also had the opportunity to delve into the past of this community. Mennonites have come to study at CMU from all over Canada, and in fact the world. I personally traveled from Calgary, Alberta, where I grew up. During my time as a student of history, I was given the opportunity to study a topic of my choosing, and of course, I chose to study the urban migration of Mennonites from small-town Alberta to the big city of Calgary, with a focus on how churches developed in urban centers. You see, just as much as CMU is woven into my tapestry, so also another place was woven in beforehand. History teaches us that incidents do not stand alone, as much as it may seem that way at times. Themes always emerge if we take the opportunity to see the forest through the trees. It is for this reason that I chose to study an area that was very close to me personally. History has taught me that we need to understand the past in order to understand the present. In the mid-20th century North American prairie landscape, it was not uncommon to see many individuals selling their farmland and moving to more urban centers. For Mennonites, this was a stretch from what had typically been the Mennonite community. Mennonites in Alberta were moving from such places as Didsbury, Rosemary, and High River to larger urban landscapes such as Calgary and Edmonton. They were moving away from not just a place, but a community. Mennonites have always thrived on a tight-knit community, a community that is more than simply a place of faith. You see, Mennonites had developed a community of economics, faith, culture, and education. This formed a community that was able to exist outside the influence of secular society. The urban setting meant that many would be finding employment that brought them into contact with others of different backgrounds. Their homes would be on streets that would be shared by many others. At the beginning, there was not even a church to attend, as many would come prior to the development of a formal church body. At the time that Peter Unger began the work of starting Foothills Mennonite Church, the second congregation in the city of Calgary after Scarborough Mennonite Church, which is today known as First Mennonite Calgary, many would have already found other places to practice their faith simply out of necessity. You see, this migration was not the same as others that would have occurred in the past. There have been many migrations of Mennonite throughout time as a result of many distinct push and pull factors, such as persecution, an offer of respite, the opportunity to own land, amongst others. This migration would be the effect of individual factors on unique family units, which resulted in significantly longer migration period that is still going on to this day. It was difficult to develop the type of community that Mennonites had experienced in the past. However, many strove towards this goal, even with many obstacles that they faced along the way. The story of Mennonites in Alberta is part of my tapestry. I have weaved the story of these Mennonites with many other stories during my time at CMU, and will continue to take the learnings that I have had at this institution wherever I go, weaving my tapestry with those that I meet. History is the study of stories, but these stories do not exist in a vacuum. They are stories affected by many other stories. They are stories affected by many other stories, and will continue to affect stories in the future. I know that even as I end my time at CMU, and likely will be forgotten over time, the stories that have been written by the students of CMU will hold on in the institution and the values held. Thank you to the many faculty, staff, and students that I learned alongside at CMU for allowing me to spend 5 years weaving my tapestry with yours.